Okay, welcome back. Welcome to Small Things Brought Together. My name is Robin Love, and this is an ongoing series exploring artists' creative process. It's a long format series, meaning that we have conversations and are not worried about the time. So we take time to reflect and share and even sit in silence sometimes as we explore the process of creating art. So we are deep in our third season, and I am thrilled that it includes our current guest, Leslie Sasaki. So Leslie generally goes by Les, so that's how I'm going to say your name from here on in. And Les is a multimedia artist. I was thinking to say you were a painter, but I feel like recently painting hasn't been as important in your practice. So maybe we'll talk about that too. So painting, drawing, sculpture, mixed media, and most recently a participatory practice. So Les also, I feel like, is central to his work and thinking, is a very accomplished university professor in visual art. And I was thinking about this morning, about how teaching formally or informally is a big part of your life and how you frame your understanding of making art. And okay, now I am going to share. So I've known Les a long time. He was one of the very first people I met in Newfoundland, actually. And his generosity towards my then very young children and treating them like real full human beings, which is not something every adult knows how to do, is something that has long lingered in my heart and mind. And that's really what I was thinking about in terms of the teaching aspect of how just sort of normal and self-conscious your interactions with them, even though they were just, 6 and 7 or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, a very fond memory of your way of being in the world. So welcome, Les Sasaki. Welcome.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks very much for the kind words.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, nice people are easy to be nice to, I
think. Yeah. So when I met you, you were in Newfoundland teaching at Grenfell, which is the campus in Corner Brook of Memorial University, but you moved on from there. And maybe, I don't know, you're welcome to share whatever you want to flesh out that little introduction. Yeah. But if it includes your trajectory, that might be fun too.
Sure. Let's see. Yeah, so I was at Grenfell, and I was there from about, I think, 1990 to 2008, about 18 years. And at the time we met, I think I may have been chair of the program. So that's why I think we had lots of conversations and things like that. And then after 18 years at Grenfell and Memorial, I moved to Ontario and was teaching at Sheridan College. It's a slightly different kind of institution, but I was there till 2018 and my retirement. So 10 years in Southern Ontario. I lived in Hamilton during that time, or the majority of that time I lived in Hamilton. Very interesting city, town, and interesting cultural community there, and a growing cultural community. And then, that's where I met my wife. So then I retired, and within a couple of years, we moved to Newfoundland for a couple of reasons. I think and well, we had done a holiday about 4 summers ago, I think. We did a holiday, and we were tied to Hamilton, Ontario, because my wife's mother was living there, and that sort of thing. But then Margaret passed away, and so some of those sort of obligations to being in Ontario kind of lifted. And then COVID came along, and so we just got talking, and I think it was a walk down by the Grand River, and we just were talking, and as the way it goes with us, we talk, and then we end up going, I think we just made a decision, uh, that's how we got married. but we were talking and said, well, gee, what would you like? For me, it's water, and for Jennifer, it's vista and air, and someplace different. She's basically only lived in Ontario, and I've been around a little bit. So we just said, oh, okay, let's start looking. So it was a bit of a process, but we looked everywhere from like Nova Scotia, and then it slowly just kind of everything started to circle back and pretty well pinpointed Bonavista Peninsula, because we'd on our holiday we experienced it, and it was a bit of an eye opener. Um, and I'm a bit ashamed to say that in the years that I was here on the island in Newfoundland, I didn't really explore Bonavista, and I didn't know it very much. So when we got there, it was just an eye opener in terms of culture and nature and all of that. It's a bit of it seems to be a growing area, I guess. So we said, oh yeah, let's try to be, close to Bonavista, close to Port Union, Clarenville as a sort of a service center, things like that. So we started looking, and with the help of a former student who is now a real estate agent.
That's handy.
Shout out to Corey Gorman. Corey was our eyes and ears on the ground, and was able to to show us some properties and do video walkthroughs and stuff. And it was a bit of a process, but here we are in Port Blanford, and really enjoying it. Yeah, it's beautiful, and it's sort of all the surprises we've had have been on the positive side. There's no like sort of we didn't realize, that sort of thing. I think when we were doing our research and looking around, I think we did the best we could, and pretty good research in terms of realizing the town was kind of a growing town, and it was within, it's 2 hours to St. John's. From this window where I am right now, if I look out the window straight that way, I can see Terra Nova Park. It's across the water, and other things, right? So we got a kind of impression of what it was and where it was situated, and then when we got here, we realized it is a bit of it's almost like cottage country, like recreation, golf courses and stuff. So it's turned out really well, and we're quite feeling quite, I don't know, thankful and enjoying it quite a bit, even under the present circumstances.
Right.
Sort of
Yeah. Well, it makes me think, when you moved to Hamilton, it was sort of I feel like you were kind of at the avant-garde of it becoming a real place for artists. Like it was really, I feel like it was at that moment where it's shifting that main street. I remember you had a studio on and it would,
Yeah,
they started to have open studios once a month. And
yeah,
now it's, you know, kind of known, I think, right, as an artist, a place for artists. And
yeah, it is. I think I maybe arrived in Hamilton at maybe on at, at a peak, or I'm not sure where on a trajectory, but artists were organizing, largely, I think, to the benefit of people like Bryce Kanbara, who longtime proponent and resident there, and he had a gallery on that street. He'd been there for a while, and it was kind of a keystone, I think, for some of the community. Um, and yeah, so there was development of festivals, music festivals now, spaces being opened up, and things like that. So it was a high time. Uh, and then maybe by the time that we left a couple of years ago, uh, that street, James Street North, was kind of being, I guess, being gentrified or whatever. Some condos had gone up. Artists couldn't afford some of the rents anymore. Um, there was a still a great festival once a month, sort of artist studios and galleries would be open, and people would walk around, and lots of stuff like that. But it it got a little crowded, I think, and
mm,
crowded with not artists, I guess,
yeah,
in a way.
yeah.
So it was changing, and then people were shifting over a little further north, I guess, to where I ended up having a studio, was at the cotton factory, and that's I don't know if you ever visited. You probably didn't see it, I don't think, but uh, it's about 120-year-old industrial factory that was used to process cotton into
Mm,
cotton duck, and made sails and awnings and things like that.
mm,
Uh, um, huge space. And so a number of interests, and it was sitting empty, I think, for a while, but a number of interests tried to open it up and get it develop it into a community hub. I know a fellow named Jeremy Freiberger was early in on that, and then after him, uh, the Zeidlers, Laura Zeidler, and her husband, they invested a lot, and they're sort of from Toronto and had done things there, and they came, and they're still there, and the place is kind of humming, I would say.
mm,
Film, uh, broom makers, artists, photographers, yoga studios, events. They have big event rooms and things like that. So I think it's really quite a generator of creative energy right now. Lots on the go and stuff. And yeah, I was there, but left because of
yeah.
so um,
Yeah, but
yeah.
now you're sort of like landing in Bonavista as it's becoming like this art hub. I feel like we just need
Yeah,
to know where's Les. Oh, that's gonna be the next cool place. Okay.
I'm a bit of a sleaze that way,
No, you're a visionary.
I have my antenna, you know. Um, but that was part of our plan. I think that we did recognize that the Monte Vista Peninsula had a lot of energy in terms of culture. The Biennale, what was going on in the town of Monte Vista, theater, things like that. and plus, you know, it had all the nature, uh, and
So
all.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it is really beautiful. And we're still on salt water here, but we're fair bit inland on the sound. And so it's quite nice and you know, but then as you drive out, you get this kind of little shift. It gets a little bit more open and a little bit wilder and things like that. So it's really great, you know, and that's all within about an hour of here.
Mm, mm.
Although, um, as I said, we're on salt water, and we're actually at a estuary that empties into the sound. So we get, you know, there's been seals on the ice out the window here, and um, fox, otters, tons of birds, just tons
Mhm.
of birds and things like that. So that was, I think, part of our, you know, wish list, and it's being rewarded that way. Uh, so, you know, if we're bored, I know I don't think we're bored, but if we ever got bored, we can just look out the window and see what's happening. And
That's a good thing.
yeah, you know, and every 2 or 3 weeks, the weather changes, the landscape changes, the animals, you know, that you see change and things like that. So um, it's pretty good. And you know, we miss a few things, you know, like maybe the repertory theater in Hamilton, uh, but not that much. You know, of course, we miss our friends, but we've been burning up Zoom quite a bit,
Right. Yes.
and discover that just recently. So Swoop, the sort of budget airline part of WestJet, I think. They're doing some very inexpensive flights from Hamilton to St. John's.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's like $200 return or something like that.
wow, that
Yeah,
is.
yeah. So our calendar is starting to fill up, I think, for this summer. You know, visitors. We had a few last summer, which is great, but I think yeah, there'll be a few more and
Yeah,
that sort of
yeah,
thing.
yeah. That's great. So
Yeah,
good. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way, we could maybe say some of your, I mean, your artwork trajectory has followed your life trajectory in terms of, like, I'm thinking about what you were doing while you were teaching at Grenfell, then it shifted as you moved to Hamilton, and now you're here in Port Blandford, and there's also shifts and changes and
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah, of course, you know, but yeah, maybe we'll talk about those.
yeah. Um, I do think about that because I don't think I'm the kind of artist who, you know, is known for that thing, one thing, you know. And and I, you know, one way of saying it is I'm inconsistent. You could say it that way, but I
In
think
a
also,
generous way.
yeah, but I think also part of my background, like, you know, being Japanese Canadian, third generation, assimilation, trying to be invisible even though you're not, all those kind of things. I think maybe has developed sort of skills where you do try to assimilate and try to accommodate to your new setting. And
Mm,
I think that's what I tend to do. Um,
mm,
you know, whether I was in Nova Scotia when I went to NASCAD and stuff, you know, you absorb a bit and try to, um, well, you're still learning. I was still learning there, but try to be part of, you know, rather than be separate from. And then coming to Corner Brook and the Newfoundland Labrador situation. So you sort of absorb and assimilate a bit. And now and then back in Hamilton,
mm.
you know, or when I was in Hamilton, what did I, I think, I don't know, I was still in that process, I think, of trying out some things. And so now I'm back here and, I'm older, I'm retired. The times have shifted in terms of art as well. We've had Black Lives Matter, we've had, missing Indigenous women, all of that stuff, so that's really changed some of the cultural landscape, I think. So I'm kind of trying to get a feel for what, with all my experiences, where can I go, or what is of interest to me, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking this morning also about how I feel like, obviously I grew up in the US, so I have a different education than people in Canada. But I think you were the first person who ever told me about the Japanese internment in World War II in both Canada and the US. Like, I didn't learn that in school, you know.
no,
It
no,
wasn't even, I don't, if it was mentioned, it might have been one sentence or something. I don't know. And so I know that's part of your family's heritage also.
yeah,
And I remember you talking about that. And yeah, it was so eye-opening for me. And it's interesting to hear you sort of coming, talking about like this assimilation and being visible and invisible, and this is part of your family's story, and how, I don't know, what I hear is like now there's kind of more of an opening to talk about that
mhm,
directly rather than this other more like, well, I'll accommodate your feelings kind of thing.
right, yeah, yeah. I think it's been a process, in ever, I guess, if I can kind of sum it up, I think, the Japanese Canadian community tended to just try to be quiet about the whole post-war. And they just kind of let's just, that was then, let's get on with things, let's assimilate. Um, let's, there, except for maybe Vancouver, there wasn't even like, the Japanese part of town, that sort of thing. So it was about kind of,
Because you grew up in Winnipeg
in Winnipeg, yeah.
and
And
played the bagpipes. Just want to put
yes,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And a really absurd way of trying to erase difference. Yeah. Maybe they won't notice me.
Yeah.
But I think the times came about where people like Art Mickey, David Suzuki, kind of were saying, it's time to acknowledge this, speak up, and out of that came um, the redress situation, and people, I think, coming to terms a bit with those experiences. Lots of novels being made, lots of art being made about it, film as well. Um, and I think now, I don't know, now maybe because of the internet, it's that process carries on, but to even larger numbers of participants.
Mhm.
So, for example, on Facebook, I'm part of a group called Japanese Canadian Facebook page, and it's everything. It's like recipes, food, um, but people sharing their archives of photographs,
Wow.
family photographs, and putting a photograph up and saying, does anybody know these people? Or they might have two bits of information, the date and the location, but then might say, does anybody know anything about that? So it's one of the best things about Facebook, I think. A lot of people are connecting. A little while ago, I was on this page and I saw a picture of my mom's family in
Oh,
southern
wow.
Manitoba. It was a familiar photograph, and I went, well, who's posting that? So it turns out it's my cousin's son,
Mm.
and he was, it's a long story, but he was sort of estranged from the Japanese side of his family. And he posted that picture, just putting out a feeler saying, does anybody know this is my
Mm.
family? Anybody know
Wow.
anything about it? And so
Mm.
immediately my older sister and I responded, and been able to fill him in on lots of background and things like that.
Mm.
So that it is amazing. And then there was this, through that same Facebook page, found out about an archive at the University of Victoria, which has lots of government documentation from that period. So I was able to find my grandparents, my father, my mom, uh,
Mm.
just things about them, the value of properties, where they were born, where my mom worked. She worked in a canning, a fishery canning place. So that's hard information, plus combined with lots of the soft emotional stuff. So that's been really pretty amazing. Uh, and I don't, in a way, it's so rich and complex, and I don't know that it's something that I can make work about,
Mm. Mm.
directly,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because it's just like, why obfuscate it behind metaphor and da da da, and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
when the actual documents and the facts are quite compelling themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting point. Yeah. I mean, I feel myself getting like teary just listening to you talk about this. Like it's, of course, it's heartbreaking because of the violence of the history, but also how you're coming to it now and the connections and yeah.
Yeah, it's I think it's really, really good and really valuable because it seems to be filling in gaps and creating a more whole story, I think, because especially people's photographs, just incredible kind of documents of people, places, stories, things like that.
Mm.
So yeah, so that's been really good. But it's a thing unto itself, and it says, it's
Yeah.
really interesting unto itself. Do I
Yeah. Well, we don't know, somehow it'll creep in, but it may not be like explicit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I have made attempts to try to let it creep in a bit too, so some of the early tape drawings and stuff like
Mhm,
that,
mhm,
that
mhm.
first exhibition there and stuff like that.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, yeah. So I thought, oh, okay, I learned about it, back when I was growing up. I learned about it and kind of dealt with it, read a few books, it's done. But it just
Mhm,
continued to, the stories just continue to unroll, and more faces, more names, and things like that.
mm,
So
mm,
yeah, it's been good that way.
mm, mm. Yeah. Mm. Well, we feel like we could talk about that the whole time, but let's. So you put together some images. Do you want to maybe share your screen and we'll take a
Sure. Let's
look?
see if I
Once
can.
again, I have ceded control. I think it's my new favorite way
Yeah.
to do
That,
these.
that
Yep, I can
working
see it.
for you
Yep,
there?
yep.
Okay. Yeah. So, and I wonder if, oh, I can move that, eh? Yeah. Well, we were just talking about how some of those personal histories and personal background might or might not find their way into some work. So I'm going to go just back to, I don't know, is it 2008 or something? Or anyways, yeah. So when I was in Corner Brook, I did I I did this image, and it was really part of my teaching research. So at the time I was teaching foundation and drawing in some senior studio. And so you're always looking for ideas. You're always looking for um, either new materials or new ways to deliver older concepts and stuff. So I was always playing around with all sorts of things. Well, maybe I should. So everything from using blueprint
Uh-huh.
blueprint paper with foundation students, so they didn't have to draw, but we did these sort of rayograms kind of thing. And this is a huge one that we did in foundation class. Um, um, or smoke, this is
Um,
smoke drawing, but I found through doing smoke drawings an old technique called cliché vert. And I think maybe Dave Morrish maybe turned me on to this. Dave was the photography prof at Grenfell, where you cover a sheet of glass in smoke and then draw through it and then print or contact print that sheet of glass.
oh.
Yeah. So we did a few of those. I don't have an example of that, but this was just a smoke drawing using simple cardboard stencils and
Mm.
kind of layering them. And
Mm.
I think I did hundreds of these, and a proportion got burnt. They had,
You're right.
yeah, they had holes. They had holes in them because I was just have a candle and
Uh-huh.
do that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the cheaper the candle, the more soot that was generated, I think.
Fascinating. I feel like I want to run and do some of these.
Well, they're fun, and I think maybe at the time too. For me personally, I was thinking of like trying to get away from my hand a bit, from in drawing and painting. You tend to maybe make the same mark again and stuff. So I was just saying, oh, if I can just sort of distance myself from my hand and just make it about smoke and shapes and stuff like that. Um, so I did a bunch of those, and I introduced cliche vert to foundation class, and Dave was great, generous to let us use the dark room to do some contact prints and stuff. Um, so I was exploring the blueprint, and then other ways, just other materials for making imagery. Um, and I think at this time, Vic Muniz was making lots of splashes, right, on the scene and stuff with all the materials that he used and stuff. So I did this self-portrait, and as sort of an experiment, and it's made with Scotch brand magic tape, just like Scotch tape, and basically I'm just drawing with it, and the tape is kind of like a brush stroke or something. Yeah, you could get the tape in two different widths. It's the kind that's kind of frosted.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the clear, it's not the true invisible, but it's the frosted stuff. And the very small bit of opacity can be built up to create denser areas and stuff.
And
So
it's
I
done
did,
on a sheet of plexi or
yeah,
some.
on a sheet of plexi. I think it could also probably be done on mylar, frosted mylar, or mylar itself. But this one, I just had a sheet of plexi, and so uh, I did it, and I kind of quite liked it. I did some experiments with the technique and stuff, but it never made it to the classroom. Um,
Hmm.
um, let's see if I can find. So
Mhm.
so yeah, so I was thinking, oh, maybe it's like a negative, and it shadows and things like that. So I did play around with that a bit. Didn't get super far with it, or I could make it work one way. Here's a photo of it. I made it work one time, but then I couldn't make it work the other another time. Um,
Mm.
and then even using the plexi and tape like a matrix or a negative, and I made a blueprint,
Mm.
contact print of it,
Mm.
which is kind of nice. Very fugitive though. It's going to be very fugitive, and
Oh.
I kind of like that too. And I thought, oh well, and maybe even a photographic thing. So I did a bit of exploration that way. Uh, I can't remember exactly why I kind of set it aside or moved away. Maybe maybe because I had to take these children of some friends of mine, and we had to go canoeing and stuff like that. Hey,
Oh, sure. Blame me.
well, there's other children too, but anyway, I don't know. So
Oh,
I tucked it away,
yeah.
and I tucked it away. I think for 18 years,
Well, if I
about
have
18
a
years.
memory, I have a memory of standing in one of the studios at Grenfell where you showed me this picture of your self-portrait and sort of the reflection and and then you like moved away. So I mean, I think part of it had to do with,
Yeah, yeah.
your whole life changing.
Yes, yeah, sort of a disruption and things.
Yeah.
Um, so so I found myself in Hamilton, uh, and I'm teaching at Sheridan. Um, and at Sheridan, the situation wasn't really. It was a different kind of situation. You're teaching skills for careers in illustration or design or things like that. So you're teaching usable, payable skills, I guess. And so there wasn't as much leeway for experimentation like this. Um, but in Hamilton, again, there was lots of energy, kind of growing art community. I was at the Cotton Center. Um, I should show you a picture of the Cotton Center, maybe if I can.
Hmm. And just for the Americans in the audience, in Canada, there's a distinction between university and college. So in the US, everything gets called college. You go to college, but
Oh,
in
okay.
Canada, that has a specific meaning. So you were teaching in Corner Brook as part of a university, which is like what we in the US would
Yeah.
call college.
Mhm.
But college is more of a vocational kind of a oriented.
Yeah,
Is that
it
correct?
is. So yeah, yeah. Um, the the degrees or diplomas are shorter duration. and they're usually, not all, there's variation, but they're usually oriented towards uh, careers, occupation. Um, so it's sort of usable skills.
Yeah.
And there's a lot, um, generally a lot less emphasis on history and academics. So it's very, very heavily studio oriented and very production kind of oriented, that sort of thing. So
Mhm.
it was a bit of a shift for me to negotiate, but it took a couple of years, but I kind of managed that. And meanwhile, I was settling into Hamilton, getting a feel for the community there. I had known Bryce Kambara, who I mentioned earlier. I'd known him, met him once at a conference, and he was the only person I knew in Hamilton.
Oh,
So, and it was, we were able to see each other once, and he had a small artist run gallery as well. But so anyways, at the in Hamilton there, there a group started a exchange with Latvia, an
oh.
art exchange with Latvia, residency in Latvia, and an artist from Latvia would come to the Cotton Center. And I thought I had a photo of the Cotton Factory, but I don't here. So anyways, so I applied for this residency, and, and I included this image, and I wasn't clear what I would do with it, but I said, oh yeah, we'll make some Latvian portraits or something like that. And I didn't get the residency. I wasn't successful. But one of the jurors, Melissa Bennett, and she is a curator at the Art Gallery of Hamilton. She saw the slide and was intrigued by it, and so she got a hold of me and said, "Well, I'm putting together an exhibition, two exhibitions of a survey of Hamilton, what's going on in Hamilton right now, and would you be interested?" I've already made most of my selections, and so you have less time to do it than others. Uh, but she was very curious about it. So it was it was a good motivation to say, okay, I've been sitting on that thing for 18 years. Okay, might as well do something with it. So, uh, and I don't know the exact order. It's been a while, so I don't know the exact order of how this happened. But uh, my wife Jennifer and I, we would have a monthly pasta dinner, invite friends, just kind of an open list of friends. Whoever showed up, we would serve pasta, and uh, lots of interesting conversation. Many of them were Unitarians, um, but you didn't have to be Unitarian.
Check your card at the door.
Yeah. um, and one of the conversations at one of the dinners got around to just being invisible. Um, and have you ever felt invisible? And for myself or people of minorities and things, that has a certain connotation and brings up certain experiences. But I was kind of curious how other people interpreted it. Did people fantasize that aliens came down and gave them a superpower and they were invisible or something like that. So we went around the table, and there were very good stories and interpretations of that. So I thought that would be a good part of this tape portrait project. So I found a number of willing subjects, and they were all friends. They were all basically friends. I interviewed them, um, and just let them talk about some experience where invisibility might have come into it. I took some photographs, that reference photographs, and then started doing their portrait, and this would be for the exhibition. And so here's how they looked in. This is sort of early on in the prep for the exhibition, but basically this is my section of it. It ended up 5 portraits. The portraits are on, does this cursor show up on? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, 5 portraits on plexiglass. They're hung 5 feet from the wall,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and the wall is basically backlit. On the wall is an excerpt from our conversation. So it's the sitter's words, and I kind of edited it, and that is applied to the wall in vinyl lettering.
Mm.
So they basically, the portraits float in space. There is a bit of space behind, I guess. You could go behind if you wanted, and then see the reverse of the image, which is just very different. And yeah, I think kind of minimal. There's not a lot of excess stuff there. And so you could look through the image, and their words would be obscured behind them, or you could read the words. So this is Bryce. This is portrait Bryce, and Bryce is a long time Canadian artist, an organizer for Japanese Canadian art. He won a Canada Council Award last year, and he's a bit of he's been around the Hamilton community a long time, proponent, lobbyist for the arts. So I asked him to be one of the subjects, and this is his statement here. Can you read it, or is it?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
So he's very specific about the war experience there.
Yeah.
But I didn't say he had to do that. I just,
Yeah.
that's what he came up with.
So your prompt was to say, like, well, what was your prompt for them?
I asked people, have you ever felt invisible, unnoticed, overlooked, or just not there? And I tried not to make it pointed, but I think people tended to go a certain direction with it. And I tried to get a variety of people, so it wasn't really about one particular group, more just how individuals interpreted that. So they're kind of like the smoke drawings in a way, very ethereal, very contingent on light, and you could kind of destroy it by just changing your angle of view on it and stuff like that.
I mean, to me, that, like, it's such a beautiful expression of your prompt, right? Like, immediately think about what you've shared about your own experience about, like, the wish to be invisible, and then how invisibility can be used against you, or you don't get the choice to be invisible, like through nothing other than being there, and look, quote unquote, looking different than everyone, and invisibility. Yeah. I mean, it's so complex, and, and so then I can really feel that in, like, the simplicity of putting a piece of tape on plexi, but, like, then there's so many layers, and then, like you say, you can have it be very readable as a portrait, but if you just shift it a little, the whole thing is gone, or
Yeah.
you walk behind, or yeah, it's
Yeah.
so beautiful, Les.
Yeah.
Really
Oh,
very
thanks.
moving, very
Thanks.
moving.
Yeah, it's kind of minimalized and boiled down to the material and the words and things. Uh, I'd like the connotations, and it took me a while to sort of focus on these, but the connotations of the tape in terms of kind of attaching, repair, uh, translucency, uh,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. I did a little research on Scotch tape, and you know, used to be used to. It was developed to replace butcher's tape to wrap uh, um, stuff from the
Oh,
butcher's tape.
wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, yeah. And the guy who developed it was an engineering student or something, and he played the banjo. That's what I got out of it. But
That's a key piece of information right there.
yeah, well, that tells you keep going. You're on the right track.
Yeah, right. And do you treat them in any way? This is more of a technical question, but I was thinking about, you were talking about the other one being fugitive, and I'm like, well, are these all going to just like flake off, and is that okay? Or have you coated them with something?
I haven't coded them. Um, I think their lifetime is finite, but that first prototype that I showed you. So when I did that, and I wanted to test it out. I wanted to like see if it would dry out and crackle and get yellow or something like that. Be, just like an oil painting might, right? Um, and I was curious to see if that happened, what would it be like? So
Mm,
so that self-portrait that I did, that prototype, I would take with me wherever I went, and in terms of studios, and I just put it in a window, so it was getting lots of UV. And I have to say, after 18 years, one little corner of one little bit is kind of,
wow.
it's pretty, um, it's pretty sound. And I
Wow.
think that maybe reflects um, the manufacturers trying to make it um, archival for scrapbooking and things like that,
Ah,
or
yeah,
book repair.
right.
But I can see that it would have some limitations, right? But after 18 years, I'm happy enough, kind of thing. Um, so yeah, so all those things add up. Like I felt, yeah, there's something here. There's something here, and how can I not overdo it, and not kind of,
Yeah.
not screw it up by putting too much into it, too much production. Um, so here's uh, two together. So there's Bryce again. And then
Mm.
this is Naomi, and Naomi is the daughter of some friends of ours. And I really loved what she had to say. Um, again, a different take on it, but she said, I've always been an introvert. Finding the right friend group gives one confidence. In a friend group, you can forget about yourself and worry more about a friend who, say, is anxious or not so confident. In these situations, you find strength and confidence as you become strong for your friend.
Mm. Mm. That's
Yeah,
so beautiful.
yeah. So, out of our conversations, hour, 20 minutes or whatever, there, I would just try to be open to these little gems of what people would say, and kind of trust that people say amazing things.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, so there's that, and here's uh,
Mm.
Bev, Horton, and hers is about being black, and maybe I'll just let people read it, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like this comment about like, oh, I don't even notice you're black. And then saying, do you have an eye problem?
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
like you said before, it's it's a concept, invisibility, but it's very, very complex, I think, you know. Um, so yeah, so that was, the five portraits. I don't have one of Roy. Oh, there's Roy. Yeah. So Roy, um, his experience was about the childhood memory from World War II.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've really ever stopped to think about invisibility as something you can control or have agency within, or versus something that gets put upon you versus something that is denied you, something that saves your life, something that actually causes you to be harmed. Yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, I've subsequently done some other a couple of portraits they haven't ever been exhibited, but someone who says, "Oh, I'm a woman. I'm getting older. I love being invisible." No pressure, no pressure to be, and a fashion plate or something like
Right.
that. There's that, or another one, friend of ours, and he says, I tend to be real quiet in situations. I tend to sort of disappear. And it's not that I'm not participating or taking things in, but I'm usually taking things in visually and listening. And then when I have something to say, I'll say it. But, you know, up until then, I'm just kind of I'm not there, or
Mm.
the perception is I'm not there, but I'm actually taking things in, and I won't fill up the air with unnecessary conversation and stuff like that.
Mm.
So everyone had, yeah, little different thing, and I like that. I didn't want to be too prescriptive, saying you must talk about this,
Yeah.
but at the same time, people's perceptions sometimes were that they think, oh, you want me to talk about this, and I'd have to go, no, no, say what
Yeah.
say what you want to say. Like if you have a memory about being a child and pretending you were invisible or something like that, go for it. That would be fine.
Mm.
Um, and oh, there is another one. There was this student, one of my students. He participated. I don't really have a detail, but Homan Zhi, and he's Chinese, and his statement was about just people would get his name confused, they would misspell, they would uh, think he's a female, all sorts of things, right? So it was about that he was just not being kind of seen, recognized, and that sort of thing.
Mm.
So yeah, so that was the first kind of public exhibition of the tape portrait. They were very, very well received. Um, yeah, I think very well received because they're a bit different, I guess, a bit different. And um, um, so, that happened. Melissa Bennett was a curator. Uh, uh, Catalogs were made and stuff like that, and it was good. I got to meet some Hamilton artists that I hadn't met before. There was a little seminar where we got to talk a bit and stuff. Um, and then it was sort of like, okay, what's next?
Somehow that always rolls around.
Yeah, it
But can
does.
we just stop for like 1 minute and just
Yeah,
appreciate that you started this thing as like a little experiment for teaching assignment that you might or might not do, and then 18 years later it bloomed into this beautiful project. And I feel like the 18 years later piece, I just want to like stop for a minute and be like, okay, there's something to like knowing when the time is right.
Yeah, I think exactly. Uh, I, I think I've had some good profs and in my education, and a few of them would say things like, um, "Well, just do some stuff and go with what seems timely and stuff. But every once in a while, go back and look at something that you did, or it, things will niggle at you over a longer period of time. It doesn't have to be in the now kind of thing." And then I'd see that happening where I'd go to exhibitions and um, I'm trying to think of a particular artist. I think a Rene Magritte exhibition or something. And there's a image of a horse running through some trees or something like that. And then 30, 40 years later, there's a similar image that he recreated, and it looked pretty much the same, but anyways,
Yeah.
that sort of thing, recurring themes. And I had same prof would say things like, well, yeah, you're do your work, absorb your lessons or whatever, and then at a certain point you've got a body of work. You look back and go, wow, look what I did. And then he said, and then you can start ripping yourself off, right? Instead of ripping off others, look at, you've got this other shopping place, so you can start doing that. So I sort of do that. I sort of do something out of enthusiasm in that first spark. And then for whatever reason, you move on to something else or whatever. But you keep it around and then you look back and you go, well, there's something there. There's something, and I think I'll get back to that, that sort of thing. So that's great because that's what art can can give you instead of like you have to do it now and deadlines and all that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, so I like that I was allowed to be able to do that over an 18-year period and allowed to allowed to kind of acknowledge that my teaching research was also accessible or allowed, you can
Yeah.
do that, right? Um, so, and plus when I was at Sheridan, times that I was at Sheridan, I was teaching portraiture as well
Uh-huh.
to foundation painting students. So it was like just knowing the nuts and bolts of portraiture and all of that stuff. So like, oh, okay, why not? Why not use some of that, but in a different way, kind of thing. Um, so yeah. Anyways, that was kind of a nice way to um, kind of I don't know, celebrate my time in Hamilton. I think that may be one of the highlights, or well, kind of a highlight, I guess. Uh, you know, but it was, yeah, the question is, okay, what next, right? What's going on next? So um, so I did continue to ask people and interview them, but I'm gonna try to show something here. So in Hamilton's North End, that's where the cotton factory is. So that's where my studio was. And that's where my first residence was, the one you visited on James Street, there with all the restaurants and the galleries and stuff. So that's sort of the beginnings of the North End. And in the city, it's a neighborhood of concern, I guess, because it's demographically poor, maybe less educated, that sort of thing. So there are attempts to support the population there. There's a lot of social services. Mission Services is an organization that does a lot of work with homeless men, and so they have a fair presence there. And then also the slide is this is called 541 Eatery, and it's 541 Barton Street in Hamilton's North End. It's run by a church. And what they have is a cafe where they serve inexpensive, nutritious food in a kind of communal atmosphere. So they run mostly with volunteers, and they have a what's called a button system. People might be familiar with that. I don't know if I have buttons here. No, but a button system where you can purchase buttons and you put them in a jar at the cash, and then other people can come and use those buttons for their food. And a button is $1.
Oh.
Up to I think up to a limit of 5 buttons per person per day. And physically it's set up too, where there might be people on a lunch break from work or something, but they're sitting at usually communal tables, large communal tables. Like over here, there are window seats and stuff, but large communal tables, and you could be sitting beside a homeless person, or the homeless person could be sitting beside a lawyer or a doctor or something like that. And so it kind of breaks down the differences between people. They also ran other programming. They showed art. There's some art here on the walls here. They show art. They have games nights. They have a church service on Sunday, and they kind of look after the family and the community of the area, that sort of thing.
The button system, though, I'm just thinking about it in this context of invisibility, and it just strikes me that there's an interesting way of using maybe invisibility / anonymity, but you're not direct, like someone could go in and buy a few buttons, right? And then not know who's gonna come along and use them. And there's I don't know, it's like a kind of interesting way of using that in a beneficial way. Like, I don't know, there's a difference between if you stand there and hand somebody $5 and say, here, go get lunch, that is like, I want to say, like, more charged in a certain way than if you like just put it in there, know it's going to do some good for somebody who needs it,
Yeah.
And then the person who needs it doesn't have to like stand there and have their hand out to receive the $5. They can just choose, I need this today, Yeah.
Yeah, their philosophy, or how they executed it, was pretty good. Like, the details reflected the whole of their philosophy. So buttons, they're only for food. You can't translate that button into something else, so it's for food. It could be anonymous, or you could be standing there, and I've seen this happen. People who would use the buttons are in the room sitting, and they can hear the buttons clink at the bottom of the jar.
So they're sort of waiting.
Yeah, they're sort of, and then they'll, or you're in line and you put some buttons in, and someone comes up right behind you, right to you, and they're going to use the buttons, and you have a little conversation. And just like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And the physical setup with the communal tables is about encouraging conversations. It is a safe place. They were very good about no disruptive behavior and things like that. Volunteers, people in the community who wanted to help, but sometimes volunteers were actually patrons themselves. So they would, in exchange for busing or food prep, they would get food. I did one of my first experiences into 541 and the system was I used to volunteer at a community hub in that neighborhood. It was partly through Jennifer's church, the Unitarians, and they sort of adopted a program at this community hub. It was called the Eva Rothwell Center. And it was a clothing room, and people would bring in donations, and then that clothing would be redistributed to people in the community for free. And so my volunteer was just to go there one day, sort and hang clothes, and help people out if possible. One day I was working, and the young fella came in, maybe mid-20s or something like that, and he was looking, and I asked him, oh, can I help you? What are you looking for? And he said, oh, I need bedding. I'm couch surfing. I don't have a place to stay, so I'm couch surfing, and I just need a pillow and some sheets, right? So bedding wasn't something we had a lot of, so I kind of tried to help him, and that was fine. Next week he was in, same fellow, and I said, hi, how you doing? And I said, you're looking for bedding, right? And he went, no, I'm on the street. I'm sleeping rough because I don't like to overstay my visits at people's couches and stuff. So I'm on the street. I'm looking for socks and mitts. So we helped him out. And then the very next day, I went to 541 for breakfast before I head to the studio. And I don't know, maybe it was one or two people in there or something. So I sat at one of the tables right in the middle of the room, and I was sitting there. And someone in the back in the kitchen was waving at me, but they had a mask on, and they're waving like that, right? And I didn't at first think it was waving at me, because I was sort of looking around like, and I didn't. Anyway, so this person's waving, and they're waving, and they're waving, and then they come out from behind the counter, and he comes up to the table and says, oh, you don't remember me, do you? I was in yesterday at the clothing center, and I was looking for mitts and socks. And so it was this fellow. And he was prepping the food in the kitchen. So one day I'm helping him out, I'm helping, I'm saying, here's some socks, here's some this and that. The next day he's making my breakfast. And that's when I had the conversation, and he said, oh yeah, I can do this once or twice a week, and in exchange for food. So that was sort of an introduction a little deeper into what 541 was about. I think most people knew generally what it's about, but this connection that I experienced there. So I began thinking about 541 as a possible community to do some portraits with. And then another coincidence, at Jennifer's church one day, Sue Carr, who is the executive director of 541, came and did the sermon. And she just talked about their philosophy. And it basically, it seemed to be about breaking down differences between people, through food and basically she, something that really impacted me, although I don't really know if I understood it, but she said that we're all nothing. And so if you take that into your mind, then you have no differences between you and the next person, and so that's part of what she said, and that kind of stuck with me. So I'd be going to 541, and I kept going and said, how can I do this? There are walls for the artwork, but they're not great. How am I gonna display and stuff like that? Then I noticed these transom windows, and I thought, oh, okay, that could work. But what about the text? Where am I going to put the text? So I thought, oh, maybe a poster directing to with code and stuff. And then I noticed that in front of me was the menu.
Oh.
So so a tabletop menu.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
So yeah. So you didn't have to bring in a bunch of stuff, right? It would all just sort of kind of work. So I got thinking, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds very good. I did have a meeting with Sue Carr and kind of asked her about it. Would they be open and stuff? And they were like super enthusiastic. Like, I think basically they had more serious stuff on their plate. So yeah, oh yeah, go ahead, do it.
Yeah, right.
And the staff were incredible young people who were very selfless, just super selfless, like helpful, welcoming to all the people. And they were kind of, I don't know, I'll use an inappropriate word, but sort of rough people. And they were just sort of kind and tolerant and everything to them. So they were very helpful to me as well. So I would visit and try to figure out how this is going to happen. How it's going to be a display or whatever. Portraits go in the transoms. I'd have to do interviews there, I guess. So, how to negotiate that. And I had my script about, oh yes, have you ever felt invisible? Like, oh my God, right?
Yes.
So thinking about it and talking about it with Jennifer and stuff, it sort of dawned on me like, no, I don't think that's the approach, right? So what I ended up doing was just going there, sitting, and as a kind of icebreaker, I brought in a portrait. And I would just sit with it. And eventually someone asked me, hey, what's that? And, I'd show them and talk about it. And they go, oh, that's pretty good, I guess, and stuff. But slowly, and so it sort of broke the ice, and I was able to talk to people and say, well, I want to maybe talk to people, interview them, do the portrait. And I think any population, some people are going to say, yeah, oh yeah, do me.
Right.
Or others, they're clear there were some people who were curious, but you could see they were a bit standoffish and stuff. So by being in that space more and talking with people, it became real evident that I had to take a soft touch to the interview,
Yeah.
and just introduce ourselves, talk, um, and in all honesty, they were fairly well aware of being examined, I think, because
Mm,
social workers and stuff like that, and nurses sometimes would come on a class assignment and
mm,
talk with them. So they were kind of savvy, I think, to these things.
mm.
But so over time, I sort of, yeah, over time, I sort of just got kind of brought in a little bit more. Some people would say, "Oh, come sit here," and there'd be introductions. Um, I get to know the characters. Some of the characters would just latch on to you, right? And oh, what? You don't want to sit over here today? Well, you're too good for me. What's going on? And stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I got to know the to a degree. I got to know the personalities in the community. One time, I doing some physical tests. I wanted to. Uh, I knew that portraits would go up there, so I'd come in. I had to measure and get some plexi and stuff. And at one point, I thought, oh, I wonder what it would look like with colored acetate behind it. So I brought in a sample and some colors, and I was up on a ladder putting them up there. And uh, people people were sitting having their lunch, and they were looking at me and going, no, 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 no. We don't like the color. No, it's better without the color, right? And so yeah, okay, yeah, that sounds good to me, Um, so from that, I kind of I got to know that it was not the art gallery of Hamilton, right? And that I was really a guest in their place, and yeah, I was the guest, and I would have to kind of behave accordingly, that sort of thing. And that was really, really neat, because the direction of the love or whatever was going the other way. It was starting to come the other way around, and
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
mean,
would, yeah, sorry.
no, I guess, the word that comes to mind is trust. And I think it's come up in several of the conversations I've had with artists, particularly people who work outside of like a museum, gallery, studio-based work and work in the community. And that's not something you can fake. You can't fake trust. So, and it takes time.
Yeah,
It's slow.
yeah, yeah,
And then you have to be open to them being like, no, take that call, like you have this great idea. And then it's like, no.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very much trust. And not try not to communicate that you want something from
Yeah.
them, right? Or that you're going to exploit them or something. I would try as much as possible just to explain what I was going to do. I said, yeah, do some portraits. You could tell a story, and it'll be for here, right? Because that's all it
Mm,
can be here, and that kind of thing. And so over a period, yeah, that trust kind of developed, right? And people were, yeah, inviting me to sit at their table. There were introductions around. So, did you know he's doing a project and
yeah.
or recommendations like, oh, you should talk to so and so, right? Um, I did need one person to be the icebreaker to get it
Yeah.
going and stuff. So the
Mhm.
staff were good that way. They helped out. And so Al was the first person. He was willing to talk about it, all
Mhm. Yeah, the critical person, yes.
yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, so I would go, I would uh, talk first. We would do an interview first, and a lot of it was their stories and stuff like that, but it didn't have to be. Um, and then after that, once there was a little bit of a familiarity, then I would just take a bunch of photographs. Yeah, because I use photographs sort of as reference
Mhm,
and stuff,
mhm.
and then worked on them periodically. Bring one in, just like at a certain point, I had a lot of work to do because I did 16 of these,
Wow.
and they were bigger. I didn't reckon that bigger.
That's a lot of tape.
Yeah, and here's a painter thing. The size of that tape relative to the canvas,
Right.
it's a difference, right? Whereas smaller works better. But so at some point I did bring one that was partially finished in to show and to generate more interest and things like that. Um, so I'm just going to see if I can show you.
Mm.
Here's four. There were one, two, three sides of the room. It's a bank. It's a abandoned bank building. So tall ceilings, um, and these transoms. So they went up, along, and around.
Mm.
Um, they would change with the light and the time of day, and they also were backed up with frosted mylar.
Uh-huh. Because
Yeah,
if you had them just straight up, you wouldn't see it.
yeah. Any shadow on it would be just a bit too much and stuff. So that was something I had to kind of I discovered or learned or whatever.
Mm.
And yeah, so there
Mhm.
they were up there. See if I can get another image here.
Mm. And were people just like really happy to see themselves?
They were, yeah,
Yeah.
they were over the moon, I would say. Well, most I think were, because they would say, you know, I can I can I be one? Can I participate and stuff? And I like to think, that someone's paying attention to them, listening to them, going to put an image of them up in their place, right? Um, you know, there's something to that. Uh, the people at 541 loved it. Just
Mm.
like I had some really good conversations with some of the staff, young staff, who, um, yeah, they just loved it. They would tell me stories when I wasn't there about how people reacted with it and stuff. Um, Sue Carr was super happy. She called them, I'm trying to remember, and Rob, one of the staff, that he likened it to a, a cloud of saints
Mm.
up in the cathedral.
Mm.
He said, this is our, and I hadn't thought of that, but he likened it to that, and Sue Carr said that this is kind of like their family. You go into anybody's house and there's a shelf with a bunch of family photos on it. And she said
Right.
that this is like that, right?
Mm.
There was one portrait I did of a woman who was fairly, she was very ubiquitous in people's memories and was always there, but she had passed away a year or so before, but staff highly recommended that she might be a person to go
Uh-huh.
be there, right? Um,
When you were talking earlier about, the potential of color, I immediately flashed on like church stained glass windows and yeah, that kind of elevation and recognition and
yeah,
important.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, yeah, but no, but they didn't want it.
Yeah,
So,
I know. Well, but in a way that like still the message was conveyed even
yeah,
without the
yeah,
colors.
yeah, and it kind of snuck in, I guess, and stuff. So I don't know what it could show here. Here is, so that's how the
Mm,
stories would be presented in these little tabletop menus, and it's two-sided, right? So it could be one Jack on this side and someone else on the other, and I just put them all around so people could not have to get up; they could just look
mm.
and that kind of thing. Um, Jack's was incredible, just really incredible. Can you read it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm, mm.
And he was when I was sort of finding people to do, he was a person who was really curious and very aware about when I came in and showed people and stuff, but he wouldn't talk to me, right? And so it took a while to break the ice with them and to eventually talk. And one time we had this great conversation, but I didn't record it because it
Mm.
was our first conversation,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
we had to kind of redo it. But um, he was a high school dropout. He had dropped out of school to donate a kidney to his father.
Wow.
Yeah, and then was his father's caregiver. But he was smart. He was like super smart, articulate, and his statement goes out on the table. And then I come in, and some of the others are quoting him. They're going,
Oh, leadership potential.
yeah, they're going, so how you doing? Good, good. Man, did you read Jack's statement? Right. So so the language, I think, just opened up the
Mhm.
dimensionality of them, right?
Yeah.
And it's their own words.
Yeah.
I'm editing and I'm helping, but it's as much as possible. It's their words. Um, they could say whatever they wanted, really. And there was tough stuff, but I think again they were used to talking to social workers and people, and so they could,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, this fellow, one fellow who was he was a I'd say semi-professional musician, and he was very nice. And I did both him and his wife, Inez, and he would talk, and he was very positive and things. And then he said, "Yeah, I have this dream project that I want to do." Uh, he said, "Everybody has maybe one poem or song in them. You know, they're not professionals, so they're not, got books full of lyrics and stuff.
Right.
But most people said they have one poem or song." He said, "I my dream project is to arrange these people's lyrics and poems into
Mm.
songs and
Mm.
record them for them." Right? And I'm going, "Oh my God, that's like a way better project, way way better project than what I'm doing, right?" And
Just
anyway,
different.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they were super people, and so always kind of making me feel kind of
Mm.
welcome and at home and stuff. So I was really, yeah, overwhelmed, I think, by some deeper sense of what hospitality is and
Mm.
what sharing the table is and things like
Yeah,
that. Um, yeah, everyone had interesting stories.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I'll show you maybe just in the studio, starting one up here.
yeah, yeah. It's, I was
In a
thinking about this,
way, the
like now we have I feel like, I don't know how connected you are to this, but in the TikTok world where there's lots of artists doing these like speeded up process things.
Hmm.
I was thinking about like, oh, I wonder, if there was any pressure or thought of like doing something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Then I thought, no, probably Les was really tuned into the TikTok world at that
No, I'm
moment.
not. I'm not. No. Um, but well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I was going to say that doing the portrait was sort of the least important thing for me,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
it's just it's sort of drawing with tape, and so I could do one in about 2 days, 2.5 days, or something like that. Um, but animating one, yeah, would be kind of interesting. Or
Kind of cool.
yeah, or I played with thoughts of actually um, using the tape to actually attach something else to the portrait too. You
Mm.
know, a lock of hair or a
Mhm.
fingernail or something like that.
Mm.
Um, to use it sort of like it's used, I guess, something like that. But
Yeah.
we'll see. It maybe 18 years from now I'll get to that.
There you go. Wow.
So this,
Yeah.
yeah, this is Bob, and Bob was great. He volunteered there. Big, tall, big, big, tall guy, but had a drug problem. And on the opening, we had a soft opening, so a lot of our friends came, but a lot of the sitters came as well. That week, Bob was in hospital. I think he had, I think, circulation problems, like lots of problems.
Mm.
He was in hospital, so it wasn't clear that he was going to make it. But lo and behold, who shows up? In a wheelchair
Mm.
with a friend who kind of extricated him from the hospital, and he was glowing from sort of pride.
Mm.
Um, yeah, he needed to be there
Yeah.
and to you know a lot of them did this. They would, even during regular hours, they'd be sitting there and they'd position themselves under their portrait. Yeah, exactly. Right. I rate
Yeah.
he did that of me and stuff like that. uh
Mm.
so Bob showed up, and he was in discomfort, but he needed to be there, and it
Yeah.
was great. He was kind of glowing, and um yeah,
Mm.
so he's a
Mm.
very
I
nice guy.
mean, yeah. I
And
feel like
then
there's layers of healing in this story too.
well, yeah, I don't know. I I can't, to be realistic, I think if you make that
Yeah.
much difference,
Yeah.
that's realistic, I think.
Yeah, not
Um,
solving any problem, but like that, that's important too. That's super important.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, in regard to that, there was another fellow. I don't have an image of him here actually. Charles. Oh, here's his. um, Very upfront about his addictions.
Mm. Mm. Wow.
Yeah, very intelligent, very smart. Like I did an interview, I came back because I would come back with a draft for each of them
Mm.
and to
Mm.
get their approval to sign off on. And he edited it. He- oh no, I think I can find a better word here. Da, da, da.
Wow.
And complex, very very
Yeah.
complex. But at the opening, he arrived, and then partway through the evening, here's a few of them. So this is the opening.
Oh, fabulous.
There's Charles there. So he comes up to me and goes, says, Les, I'm catching myself smiling way too much. I'm having to be nice to people, right? That I had a schedule for my integration into society, and this is too fast. Right?
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
but
Oh.
so there's Charles, there's Laurel, there's Jack. This is Leah, who is the chef. So she was a trained chef, but chose to work with 541.
Mm.
So she was in charge of menu and stuff like that. And this is Janice, who I think is their longest standing volunteer there. And Janice also lives at L'Arche. So I don't know if people are aware of L'Arche, but it's a living community for people with cognitive um,
Oh.
difficulties and stuff like that. So they live there and they do programming stuff. But she also volunteered here, and just
Wow.
she loved it. She was amazing. She's an amazing person, um, and got because of her got us to visit L'Arche and visit. There's a L'Arche in Hamilton. Go to the open
Mm.
house and stuff. And here's her portrait,
Mm.
which it's one of my favorites, I think.
Mm. Mm.
Um, yeah, so they're
Thing about this.
very interesting.
You know what? I just
Pardon?
need to plug in my computer. I'm just worried I'm going to lose my battery power. But
Okay.
yeah, this
Yeah.
is so good. So good. There we go. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Mm.
Lori is another volunteer. Some of Jennifer's friends in the church know him and knew of him, but he was having surgery, and surgeon nicked a vein and caused brain damage.
Oh my
So
gosh.
he couldn't work, and he was sort of cognitive difficulties and things. So
Mm.
he was volunteering as well.
Mm.
Uh,
What an amazing place. I mean,
yeah, I was it was yeah, it was almost spooky how people were they were very selfless, like with the staff, and they're mostly young, like
mm.
young.
Mm.
Some of the volunteers would be older and stuff, but most of the working staff were very young. And during COVID, they've been doing door, um, just bag lunches and things
Uh-huh.
at
Uh-huh.
the door. Um,
Yeah, I think in that first photo you showed, there was someone sitting in the door with a mask on.
yes, yeah. And during regular times, there would be donations of hats and socks in the dining rooms that people could just pick.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. So
So
anyways,
beautiful.
that it was a very intense experience, very
Yeah.
memorable experience for me too. Um,
I mean, I feel like, the investment, this gets back to the trust thing, but, you invest your time and energy and care over this long period of time, and there's a mutual investment in the project that gets, beyond, it goes beyond you, which is different than if you're in a studio making a painting or,
yeah.
it's just different. I don't want to put one over the other, but
Mhm. Yeah.
the yeah, it's hard not to kind of make an association with that buildup of layers of tape and the buildup of layers of trust and investment and care.
Yeah. Yeah. I think care is a very pertinent word because I try, like in decision making, respect,
Mm,
things like that.
yeah.
Even, and, obviously in the personal interactions during interviews and stuff. And people did give me feedback. They said, well, he asked good, respectful questions. I did, I think early on, I think at the very beginning, I thought, oh, I gotta make one of them say the word invisible.
Yeah.
you know, because I need that, but
Yeah.
I had to throw all of it out once you actually meet, a person, and you go, oh,
Yeah.
there's way more here than just the sociology,
Yeah. In the just, if you don't mind, I'm going to bring in my previous episode. Just,
Oh yeah, yeah.
well, but part of the conversation was around in the creative process, where does agenda come in? What is your agenda? And there has to be one, like, otherwise, why are we even motivated, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but then it's like we were talking about this sometimes the agenda is misplaced, and can you, like, what I hear is like, oh, you came in with a kind of an agenda, because of course you did, you had to, and then the reality of working with other beings, you have to kind of like drop your agenda and kind of discover, well, what is the actual,
Yeah.
what is really going on here, and to your ability to drop your agenda is like, to me, that's actually like the way the project just becomes more complex and rich,
Yeah.
and yeah, that
Yeah, for
has,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
So
well, I think, yeah, a number of thoughts come to mind. So, part part of this, I was heading towards retirement, right? At that
mm,
time. So it's, you think of it and you go, well, it's too late. You're never going to get into the National Gallery of Canada, or something like that,
mm,
or
yeah,
why, why do things to just build your CV or, all that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And I think to the credit of being in Hamilton and Jennifer and her association with the church, because the church was very involved with social justice issues and very, very community oriented and stuff. So met some amazing, unselfish people.
Mm,
And then 541 and the North End. Um, I think at that point it was just like to incrementally contribute to that community,
mm,
or to, bring a little um, uh, affirmation to some people, right?
yeah.
Um, that, yeah, and in the end, it was like, I think people were asking, oh, would you sell those? How are you going to sell those? How are you going to,
Mm,
And in the end, I just donated them to the eatery, and I, gave them some instructions and stuff, and I said, you can keep them up or put them down or whatever, and here's how you do
Mm.
it,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So yeah, so they're, yeah, I like doing it that way, and it did, in the end, it's a great thing on the CV, I guess, too,
That agenda was met anyway.
yeah, yeah, it's not either or, it's both and, but
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. I mean,
you
that's
know,
another level of trust is like, can you trust this this impulse versus, oh, I really want, to be in the National Gallery or whatever,
mm, mm,
Yeah, but could actually trusting your heart.
yeah,
Yes, to
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Trusting. Yeah.
yeah, I think that's largely what I learned from it, and uh, that trust, by seeing it in other people,
Mm,
and seeing it in other people who have so much less than I do,
mm,
they, or who have, yeah, just have had maybe tougher lives or whatever. Uh, there were, people who are addictive and all this kind of stuff,
mm,
and yet they had humor and, a kind word and all of that kind of stuff. So
mm,
yeah, that's sort of, I think, what I got out of it.
mm.
Um, um, yeah,
Mm. Yeah,
but
like what you said, the mutual exchange. It's not just you
mhm,
came in and got what you wanted, it was like actually became a circle of
yeah, yeah,
exchange.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was very aware of trying not to be, or trying to not be exploitative.
Mm.
I think I had, I did have people sign on to things, and I'd talk to Jennifer and others just to, is this the right approach? But
Mm.
at that point, I had to give up a lot of stuff and just, okay, I get it. I'm the guest,
Yeah.
I'm the guest, and yeah, you
Yeah.
know, this is their home, this is their community. I'm the guest, and I will be invited in, or I won't be. Doesn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's how it was going to go, kind of thing.
Mm.
I did, partway through the process, I did get the nickname the Tape Guy.
Very apt.
Yes. Oh, let me introduce you to the Tape Guy, and stuff. But after a while, they got my name and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I want to thank you, because I could, revisiting this, brings up a lot of good memories.
Mm.
I do know for sure that at least one of them has passed away since
Mm.
that time.
Yeah.
It's 2019. Uh,
Mm.
yeah,
Not that long ago. Mm.
not too long ago. Yeah,
Mm.
and yeah, and then I don't know. So what comes after this, I don't know. I'm not sure, but I worked on a bit of something here. So
Mm.
this is, so at the cotton factory. Maybe I'll show lots of old industrial windows.
Yeah.
Uh, and it is a old brick factory, and lots of corridors, big spaces, small spaces, stuff like that. So um, they had uh,
Mm.
the company,
Mm.
company,
That's
they
so beautiful.
published a sort of like employees news bulletin,
Mm-hmm.
and in it would be like um, community news, or yeah, community news and some pictures. Um, I went to the public library and got as many copies and took some photographs of some of the portraits. But I was doing some of the portraits and it just didn't feel right. Um, Partly because there were these people staring out at me. Anyways, so I started looking at this is I guess an old blueprint of a layout of one of the buildings,
Mm.
designating what was in that floor. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 5, 6 floors. So ring spinning, spooling, twisting, lockers, drums, slubbers, carding, winding,
Yeah.
lockers,
Pickers.
etc. So, and I'm sure that some of these terms you're familiar with.
Yeah.
So what I did was I just sort of took some of these uh, terms
Mm.
because the place was a place of making,
Yes.
and yet that's all gone. It's pretty much just this the shell, and everyone's got their yoga studios and photography studios in there and stuff. So I just sort of wanted these sort of maybe a little bit of a harkening back,
Mm.
ghosts of or
Yeah.
reminders of what went in there. So I took some of the weaving terms and I made these panels, put them in some windows, and I just put them up in the building in a
Uh-huh.
couple of spaces. And light
Like
would
a
come.
guerrilla style, like no permission kind of thing.
Yeah, but people did that a lot anyways. The
Uh-huh.
hallways people were encouraged to fill the hallways with their artwork
Oh.
and stuff like that. So but they would cast some shadows and
Mm.
stuff, things like that. So just these were rather than the portrait of a person, these were their positions.
Mm-hmm.
These were their job, I guess. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a
Mm-hmm.
doffer,
Mm-hmm.
flubber,
Mm-hmm.
someone who was a second hand. That's an action, but there were
Mm-hmm.
winders. So yeah, that was something. Um,
Yeah, I mean, the history of cotton is a very brutal one and continues to be on many levels,
yeah,
historically and environmentally. And, thinking about again, like invisibility and invisible histories and invisible people in the process, it's still a very alive topic, with fast fashion and, yeah, like the environmental cost of producing cotton thread for clothing. And
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's such a,
yeah.
wow. Yeah.
I, I kind of I did this, partly to keep busy. Um, and there was no announcements or anything like that. People would just discover it. But I didn't go
Mm,
into those issues. I think maybe seeing all those faces though
mm,
kind of did take me aback because you could see in the faces that life was rough,
yeah.
you know. Um, yeah,
Those
life.
machines were so dangerous, like the pickers and stuff.
Yeah,
People easily killed in
yeah,
those machines. Yeah.
yeah. So and yeah, so anyways, just sort of a reminder of a bit
Mm,
of what went on in that building, 120 years ago, I guess now, um, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, so that sort of brings us, I guess, up to the present. And,
mm,
I could show you. This is not my
yeah. I'm
work,
curious about the-
but this is
Uh-huh.
the north end. Uh,
Uh-huh.
very close to 541, very close to the cotton factory. These started showing up just in the months before we moved. Somebody, and I tried to find who this person was, but I couldn't make a contact. Some other artists knew maybe who this person was, but they're, you know, portraiture sort of this is actually right across the street from 541, so it gives you a little bit of the sense of the neighborhood there. But
yeah.
maybe a bit mysterious, you know.
Yeah.
But it kind of indicative of the energy that's in Hamilton. It's yeah, there's a good energy there, and I guess during the last couple of years, Hamilton has attracted a number of artists from Toronto and elsewhere. People finding it to be a bit more affordable, I suppose, you know, and also just energy with arts festivals and the Cotton Factory, and I guess just generally the cost of living is a bit better. Yeah, and then here's one. This is the only commission that I was asked to do based on the tape portraits. The others are based on communities and stuff. So this is Andrew McPhail. He's an artist in Hamilton, textile artist, and probably maybe the first person I met when I came to Hamilton. And he approached me and asked me to do a portrait exchange. He does, I should have put an image of the one he did. He does some in paint and stuff like that. Oh, I hear a cat.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard my cat meowing. It was getting a little irritated. I hear your cat meowing.
So anyways, so that, it sort of brings us up to the present. We're here in Port Blandford, and
yeah,
in the same time zone as you.
Yes, the first. Yeah, and yeah, I guess you're once again you find yourself saying like, well, what's next?
Yeah.
Do you have a what's next?
I brought a list of some older and slightly unfinished projects that I thought I might pick up again. So that's sitting there.
It's really loud.
He's only got one volume. That's it.
A Newfoundland cat, by the way.
Yeah. For anybody who's still watching, yeah. So Moku has been repatriated.
Yes.
To the island, yeah, and he's loving it. Yeah, but yeah. So there's some old unresolved projects that I might relook at. I'm painting a little bit just to keep, you know, mixing paint and stuff.
Yeah.
Jennifer has been more active than I. She's been involved in a show at the Union House Arts, and she's done some mapping things. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. We'll see. You know,
Yeah.
see what happens. I did do a little display. I was asked to do a little display at during Apple Fest here. So during the they have the pancake breakfast in the Legion, and a portion of that is dedicated to a visiting artist. So I was asked to put up a display, and yeah, that went well. I did a tape portrait of the mayor. Yeah, and, you know, so that there was someone people could recognize. They could walk in and go, that is Chad, right? So that went over okay. But yeah, anyways, I think I'll know what the next thing is. Just
Yeah,
again, you know, sort of
totally.
uh, yeah, intuition or feelings or something like that.
Yeah. Well, this feels like a good place to wrap. Do you want to stop the share of your screen and then so we'll
Sure.
just, there you are, full size. Yeah, so hang on, don't leave. But I'll stop the recording. But before we do that, I just want to again say thank you so much for sharing your work and these
Yeah,
beautiful projects. Yeah, love it. Yeah, lots to think about as we move on. So thanks, Les.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah.